Hello and welcome to the RationalFanz podcast. That is RationalFanz with a Z. Our hosts here are a little depleted. We have Evan Kruger over
What's
here.
happening?
And Nate Haynes.
Hey, RationalFanz Nation, what's up?
Rhett and Tim are lazy and decided to sleep in, I guess.
I don't think Tim's going to be joining us anytime soon.
I think that's a fair assumption.
Yeah, he likes to sleep in.
Lazy bum. All right, anyways.
So this week in NBA, we have the Warriors. Steph Curry averaging 33 points a game, like 7 assists and like 5 rebounds. Warriors are 13-0 on the season, I think. That's just absolutely ridiculous. They've been blowing their teams out, too. They really haven't had a close game.
You know, I've seen a lot of comparison to the Jordan 72 and 10 Bulls. And, you know, I was kind of skeptical at first, but, you know, it's not easy to get to 13-0 because, I mean, any given night in the NBA, you can just have an off night and you can lose. But they've won 13 in a row. That's hard to do at any time in the season, especially at the beginning of the season when teams are still kind of fresh. They're still, you know, they still have hope and whatnot. And then another team on the opposite end of that is the 76ers. They're still winless, as you know, as expected because they have zero talent. But, you know... You know, everybody was thinking, you know, the Warriors, they'll be good, but they won't be great. But they've been absolutely great. And I think that's entirely contingent on the play of Steph Curry. And I don't see him slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah, you know, I've heard, recent rumor has it, you know, Kevin Durant, might be going to Golden State. Well, you know, for good reason. You know, they've been dominant. And, I don't know if Kevin Durant will want to take that big paycheck or lower paycheck, but you know, the Warriors have been fantastic, you know, continuing that that kind of dominance that they've had since the end of last season. So it's been pretty impressive.
You know, I've seen plenty of comparisons between this year's Warriors team and the 72-win Chicago Bulls. I saw an article on CBS Sports, and then in the comments you have all these Bulls fans who are saying how the 72-win Bulls are so much better, saying they would just shut down the Warriors. And I'm not sure that I completely agree on that one.
Well, I mean, you know, you've heard Kevin Garnett, when he talked about Steph Curry, I mean, he saw Michael Jordan play. And he said that just like Michael Jordan was in a class all his own, Steph Curry is in a class all his own, because we've never seen anybody with the kind of speed and athleticism that he has that you also have to guard from 40 feet out from the basket. And so I don't know if anybody can shut down Steph Curry. I mean, he had one game where he was like 2 for 10 from 3, but that was more of an anomaly, and he still had like 27 points. And they still won because, you know, they still have Klay Thompson and Andre Iguodala, Draymond Green. They have a lot of key pieces that are primed to make another title run, which I don't see any reason why they couldn't win a title.
You know, putting them as the number 3 seed in my West in my preseason predictions, that just looks idiotic now. I figured the Spurs would do good and the Thunder would do good and be ahead of the Warriors, excuse me. But that just looks idiotic now, really.
Yeah.
And the Thunder, without Kevin Durant again, Westbrook putting up MVP-type numbers again. It's ridiculous that how he's carrying the team without Durant there.
Yeah, you know, we kind of saw this last year too, you know, with Durant being out. You know, Westbrook, he loves to handle the ball, and you know, I think a lot of times we see good Russell Westbrook and bad Russell Westbrook. You know, he'll have a game where, you know, he puts up like 30 points, 10 rebounds, like 8 assists or something like that. He gets a lot of triple doubles too, but yeah, there's other games, man, he does not look very good, and it looks like he needs Durant.
You know, I think that, you know, having Durant and Westbrook on the floor at the same time, it's not really a winning formula for the Thunder, because you have two people whose styles of play clash so much in Durant and Westbrook. They both need the ball in their hands, and that's hard to do when you have two players that are as talented as Westbrook and Durant, because they both think that they're the ones that should be running the offense. I mean, we all remember back in 2012 what happened when they kind of had a clash in the playoffs because they got destroyed by the Heat because Russell Westbrook was laboring under the delusion that he could shoot jump shots, and he pretty much screwed the Thunder out of a title. And so I think that one of those pieces is going to be moved within the next couple years, probably Durant. You've heard talk, going to Golden State, possibly going home, in quotation marks, to Washington to play for the Wizards. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Durant.
Imagine if they still had James Harden. Then you would have 3.
That would be so dysfunctional.
That would be 3 people who want the ball constantly on the Thunder, and that would just be absolutely awful, really.
Well, they had it to where Durant was running the show. They had Harden coming off the bench, and Russell Westbrook simply complimenting Kevin Durant. But I think Russell Westbrook's really grown out of that role, and that's a role that he doesn't want to be in, and I don't think that's a role he deserves to be in because he's a great player. He's probably the best point guard in the NBA.
So let's turn to college football now. The college football rankings came out last night at like 10 o'clock, thanks to the Duke and Kentucky game. We have the same rankings as last week, with Iowa and Oklahoma State rounding out the top 6. Not much of a shakeup, not much of a challenge for any of the top 6 teams, really. Oklahoma State did almost lose to Iowa State. Imagine that. If Oklahoma State loses to Iowa State, a bad team, you get 2011 flashbacks to where they lost to Iowa State, missed the BCS Bowl because they lost to a bad team.
It was kind of what I expected. I thought that the top 4 would stay the same, which it did, not surprisingly. And then I figured Iowa would stick around at number 5. And then I thought Oklahoma State would be up there pretty high because, they did beat Baylor. They handed them their first home loss in 21 games against a still really good Baylor team. And then Oklahoma at number 7, that's about where I thought they would be too. And so the Big 12, their hopes are still alive. But you've heard it before, and you're going to hear it until they select the college football playoff teams, that it's going to be hard to sell a one-loss Big 12 team to the committee. And that's just the facts of college football, that they just don't like the Big 12 that much for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to be difficult for Oklahoma to make it in. Oklahoma State, if they can win out, they have a better shot. But unless one of those top 5 teams loses or stumbles at any point, then we're going to probably see the same top 4 playing for the title that we have now.
This upcoming week for the Big 12 is a really telling week on the future of the Big 12 in this year's playoffs. You have Oklahoma playing TCU and Oklahoma State playing Baylor, and both of those are really tough matchups. And if Oklahoma State and Oklahoma can come out of this week with the win, the following week they play in what is essentially the Big 12 title game, really.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, they have a lot on the line going into next week. I think something that would be kind of interesting, though, what if both of them lost this week? Then, the rankings, they just blow up, but right below the top 5. But, the Baylor-Oklahoma State game is really intriguing, too. But, yeah, it'll just be interesting to see what happens.
The Big 12, it's always been hurt because they don't have a title game. They don't have that one extra game where they can impress the committee like the Big Ten or the SEC, because you talk, say with Florida, if they can just make it to Georgia, if they can make it to the SEC title game, then they can maybe get that W against Alabama, and maybe they'll have a shot at getting in. Or, Iowa, if they can get to the Big Ten championship, which they will, then if they beat Ohio State, then they're going to have a chance at making it in. But with the Big 12, you just have this round robin, and then you sit there for a week with your fingers crossed, hoping that what you've done in the regular season is going to be enough, which it never has been, really.
I think Iowa and Ohio State go undefeated, which is pretty likely at this point. I think if they both go undefeated, the Big 12 championship game will be the deciding factor on which Big Ten team gets into the college football playoff, because whichever one loses, that'll be their first loss of the season, and they're probably going to be out for a Big 12 team maybe, or Notre Dame or whoever moves into that last spot.
Yeah, you almost get the feeling now, the college football playoff rankers now, they're kind of feeling shaky about Ohio State. They've been, they just haven't been playing as well. And especially with the whole controversy over, JT Barrett, we're not feeling, number one like they have been the whole season and, at the end of last season. So, yeah, hopefully they start, for Rhett's sake, hopefully they get on a roll again. But, yeah, this has been a very entertaining year in college football.
Staying in the Big Ten, Indiana, if they could even pull off half of their upsets that they've been in, they could be in the top 25. Seems like against every top team, they're within 7 points. They take it to overtime. They took Michigan in double overtime. Then they lose.
Well, they didn't take Michigan to overtime. Michigan took them to overtime. They were winning, and Michigan had to score on the last play of regulation to get in. And it's so frustrating, but it's funny because this year, for the 41 bowl games, including national championship, they need 80 teams. And then it's really likely that they're going to have 5 and 7 teams to fill some of those spots. And so I read an article yesterday about how confusing the tiebreakers and everything are. They don't really know what they're going to do. And so right now Indiana still has a shot at the bowl game, even though they're probably only going to get one more win, and that's against Purdue, the worst team in the Big Ten.
But they held close with Michigan State. They held close with Michigan. They held close with Ohio State. If they'd beaten all three of those teams, college football would have gone crazy.
Well, if they could have beaten one of those teams, and had they not choked against Rutgers, you're looking at a team that could be contending for a bowl game that isn't the American Solar Direct City of Angels Bowl no one's ever heard of. All right, I'll take this opportunity to go to last week's scores. I mean, the one that caught everybody's eye, I'm sure, is Alabama, Mississippi State. Because for the second year in a row, we were hearing, Dak Prescott, he's going to come in. They played LSU and they beat him, but that was against a one-dimensional team. Dak Prescott can do it all. And then he goes into Alabama and he chokes again. He absolutely stinks. And they lose by 25 to Alabama. And, it's looking like Alabama's probably not going to lose again this season. They're running out of opportunities to do so. I mean, I think they play Southern Alabama or something this week. Then they play Auburn, who's not really that great at all. And then Alabama's going to make it into the college football playoff.
Florida has clinched the SEC East, so Alabama will play Florida in the SEC title game if Alabama can win out. Do you see any chance that Florida upsets Alabama?
No, because in recent weeks, I mean, they've just played a pretty sloppy game against South Carolina, Florida did, and they just haven't really been impressing anybody really at all. And so I don't know if they're going to be able to contend with, the firepower that Alabama has, especially Derrick Henry, who's pretty much torn the Heisman from Leonard Fournette's grasp with his performances in the last few weeks. I mean, he's just been dominating. And then so I don't know if any team can stop that.
Yeah, talking about Leonard Fournette and, the LSU Tigers, with them getting blown out by Arkansas, it's obvious that, they're just done. They're not even going to play for like a higher bowl game. They're just, they're just going to tank in the rankings. So, we still got next year, It's whatever, sometimes, as a team, you got to wonder, if they lose a game or, even, if they're undefeated, but they see themselves, ranked lower in the college football playoff rankings, you got to wonder, we don't have a chance. So, let's just kind of give up on this week, whatever, we're probably not getting it anyway. So, that I wonder if that goes through their heads because I think it might.
I've heard talk that Les Miles is actually... he's gone from number 2 in the nation to competing pretty much for his job because LSU is tired. I mean, Nick Saban has had his number for the last 6 years, and he's not been able to do much of anything at LSU, and they're kind of tired of it. And this year is it's just a continuation of that.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree with that. the one problem that Les Miles has always had is that he cannot recruit quarterbacks. He never has been able to and never will be able to. And, even, Nick Saban, he can turn, Blake Sims into, a decent quarterback who can run the system at Alabama. So, that's really what separates the rivalry.
Alabama's running back, Derrick Henry, he's a great college running back. But, I'm not really sure that I would fear him in the NFL given the Alabama running backs in the past. I mean, you have Trent Richardson, Mark Ingram. Seems like every running back that comes out of Alabama is a big NFL bust, really.
Well, I mean, all right, let's analyze the Alabama running back situation. The first on that list is Trent Richardson. He got like 900 yards his rookie season with the Browns. The Colts thought that they could just leverage their future and trade for him from the worst franchise in NFL history. And, that didn't pan out. And then Mark Ingram, he's consistently ranked as a top running back, but he never actually plays as a top running back. He's I have him on my fantasy team. He's always projected to get like 16 points, and he ends up with 60 rushing yards and 30 receiving yards because he can never get more than 3 yards a run. And then Eddie Lacy, he got benched because he's too fat to play, but he's not fat enough to be told that he's too fat to play. And, he's got benched by James Starks, who got 2.8 yards a carry and, is 30-something years old. And so I wouldn't take a chance on Derrick Henry. If I had to pick, I wouldn't waste it on him. But right now, he's a great running back. Oh, he's the best.
Yeah, and another running back, too, T.J. Yeldon in Jacksonville. He, for being a high pristine, Alabama running back, he hasn't looked dominant like he did at Alabama. And, a lot of players from Alabama, they just end up being, products of the system, outside of, maybe Julio Jones, because, that guy's pretty good. But, they're running backs, they've just stunk in the NFL.
Well, that's the thing. It's just because they have a massive offensive line that's the best in college football, and anybody can run behind that.
Looking at the ACC, can we say there's a bigger what-the-heck loss than North Carolina's last loss to South Carolina at the beginning of the season? North Carolina is top 15 now, but they only have that one loss to South Carolina. South Carolina just stinks this season. And North Carolina, what the heck? How do you lose to South Carolina?
It's another one of those useless upsets that don't do anything at all. They just screw over one team, and then the other team goes happily on their way 4-8.
Exactly.
That's about what South Carolina's going to finish this season. North Carolina's offense has done fantastic the past couple weeks. They're averaging 40 or 50 points over the last 2 weeks.
They put up 59 last week.
And they put up 50-something against Duke, so North Carolina's offense is playing really, really good. And they put up 13 points against South Carolina. It just blows my mind.
Agree.
Yeah. All right. I'll move us on to next week's games. We've got a couple of those 20-something versus 20-something matchups that, at the beginning of the season, they really catch your eye because you're like, ooh, ranked teams, football. But, at this point in the season, you only really care about the top 10. And so those those 20 to 25 matchups, number 20 Northwestern versus number 25 Wisconsin, and 24 USC versus, surprisingly, number 23 Oregon. And, those are matchups that are great for those schools and great for those teams, but not necessarily great for college football because nobody really cares about them too much.
Yeah, my game of the week, maybe a game that's a little bit under the radar now, Michigan State and Ohio State. This is an absolute must-win for Ohio State, just because, given Michigan State's struggles recently, if Ohio State ends up losing, then their playoff hopes are gone. So that's a crucial game in the Big Ten.
Not much can be said about the SEC for a game of the week because they're all playing crappy teams. Like Evan said, Alabama's playing South Alabama, and I know Auburn is playing Idaho. So
someone's playing the Citadel, whatever that is.
Let's see. Florida is playing Florida Atlantic. South Carolina is playing the Citadel. Alabama is playing Charleston Southern. Georgia is playing Georgia Southern. Kentucky is playing Charlotte. And the rest of the teams are playing in-conference matchups. The rest of those suck.
Shameful. It's shameful. You got the best conference in the world, and the second to last week of the season, you got them playing 2 and 8 FCS teams that no one's ever heard of. And the only reason I knew who the Citadel was is because I've played against them on my college basketball 09 video game. You know, I think that the SEC should have to play 9 conference games because, especially since, you know, it's no longer just a football team. It's also pretty much the broadcasting arm of your school, and it's not going to help your school when you're playing these terrible teams that nobody wants to watch. So I'm sure the networks want them to play better teams. The fans want them to play better teams because we're going down this crucial stretch of the season, and they're playing these cupcake games. You know, it's shameful.
For bonus points, Evan, do you know where the Citadel is located?
Oh, gosh. Maryland?
I'll have to look that up.
You don't even know?
I'm pretty sure it's somewhere in North Carolina, but I'll have to look that one up.
See, I don't even know.
Well, of course you know, Mason.
For my game of the week, I'm going with the two Big 12 matchups, Oklahoma-Baylor and Oklahoma State and Baylor, Oklahoma TCU. Both of those have major impacts on the college football rankings and the Big 12 as a whole, whether they get left out or whether they don't for this upcoming college football season.
All right, one correction. Alabama is actually playing Charleston Southern, not South Alabama. Big difference.
Yeah.
Charleston Southern's 9-1 though. Huge matchup.
Yep.
No, the Citadel is in South Carolina.
Ooh, you see, I was on the East Coast at least. I was close.
So let's look at the NFL now. Peyton Manning breaks the NFL all-time passing record. Congratulations to him. I mean, that's a pretty amazing feat. But he does it on a day where he goes 5 for 20 for 35 yards and 4 interceptions. Like, I would rather get benched and put up an average day than put up an awful day and break the record.
You know, that's funny. I saw a picture of them putting the football with which he broke the record into the NFL Hall of Fame, along with the Peyton Manning jersey that he wore, of course, because he's Peyton Manning. And you know, are they going to have the stats from that day on the on that plaque or something? Like on this day, November 2015, Peyton Manning struggled to break a passing record and then threw 4 interceptions and got benched for Brock Osweiler, who chipped in another interception against a mediocre Kansas City team. You know, people like to downplay really Peyton Manning's passing record, but that's a major accomplishment. You can't just play 20 years and expect to be great for so long. You know, Peyton Manning is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And, of course, all those, especially Patriots fans, are like, oh, kiss the rings. Oh, you hate us because you hate us. Oh, he's a choker. He's not great in the playoffs. You know, I think that we should just appreciate Peyton Manning for what he is, the greatest regular season quarterback that has ever lived. And, you know, throw in a Super Bowl ring, and he's got a case for #1 QB of all time. And so I don't think we should downplay the record. But even still, that was a terrible game, and it's really embarrassing and painful to watch.
Oh, yeah, you know, I think we got to appreciate, you know, Manning. Well, you know, this is most likely his last year. He lacks the arm, and he's probably not going to return next year. But, you know, we got to appreciate these older quarterbacks while they're still here, you know, because college football, you know, it's not looking too promising in the quarterback aspect, you know, and we're going to see the game change. And, This is probably the golden era of quarterbacks in the NFL, and we're probably going to see big numbers from quarterbacks. But you know, this you know, pocket, you know, style of play, you know, we might not see that for a while. And Peyton Manning, you know, he's a legendary quarterback, and he was so great for so many years.
You know, to go along with that, you know, we've seen quarterbacks come along who've managed to put up numbers for 1 or 2 seasons like Matthew Stafford, but we aren't really seeing any quarterbacks that we can say, that guy is going to be great. He's going to have sustained greatness, and for 15 years, he's going to lead a team consistently that can be a quarterback or a Super Bowl contender like Peyton Manning has, or even a Tom Brady, an Aaron Rodgers, even Ben Roethlisberger. And, it's going to be sad to see because I can't name a single college quarterback that I think is going to even be remotely good in the NFL.
Yeah. Since we're so young, I'm not sure that we can fully appreciate the greatness of this record. Like, this record has been broken, and this is like 70, 80 years of the NFL, if not longer. So what Peyton Manning is doing is absolutely great, and I'm sure in 30 or 40 years we can look back on it and be like, whoa, I remember that year that Peyton Manning broke that record. That was something crazy to see, but we can't really fully appreciate it right now because we're so young and we aren't fully aware of the history of the NFL.
Well, I mean, think it's 71,000 yards. That is a lot of passing yards. Like, you think quarterbacks throw for 4,000 yards a season, you got to play forever to break that record. And I think that's one that's going to stand for a long, long time.
I think that'll stand for a long, long time as well there. The Packers, they're now 6-3 after starting the season 6-0. Lose to the Broncos, lose to the Panthers, but worst of all, they lose to the Lions in Green Bay for like the first time in 24 years. What the heck happened, Packers?
Oh, yeah, that for the Packers, wow, that's pretty embarrassing. You lose to statistically the worst team in the NFL, the Lions recently, just clean the house, and Matthew Stafford's been looking really unmotivated, but oh my gosh, yeah, what, are you kidding me? You can only put up 16 points on the Lions, and the Lions almost choked too, with that onside kick at the end. I was like, oh, here we go, Packers win again, but nope, get the 50-yard field goal blocked. So
I looked at that replay. I don't even know if it was blocked or not.
Yeah,
I didn't. Was it?
I think maybe the Lions defender might have just got the fingertip on it, but he could have botched it too.
What I saw was it went over their hands, and he just completely choked.
Yeah.
Either way, it wasn't a good kick because it was so shallow. I mean, that was just embarrassing. And the Lions tried to lose, missed 2 extra points in one game. You have the sure-handed Megatron out there on the kick coverage team, and he drops the onside kick. I'm just glad that the Packers won, though, because, that means the Vikings are in first place in the NFC North, and we don't have to hear the condescending Aaron Rodgers, talk about how great he is.
Yeah, it's been... the Packers, they've dominated the NFC North, ever since they beat the Bears in that, sorry, Tim, but ever since they beat the Bears in that 2010 NFC Championship game. Are we seeing a change in power? Maybe. I'd probably give it another year just to, make sure. But, but yeah, the Packers... obviously, the loss of Jordy Nelson hurts them, but their offense is just so dysfunctional right now. And Rodgers, it almost looks like he's playing scared. It's something that we really haven't seen throughout his recent career.
Teams are catching on. They understand that Devontae Adams, Randall Cobb, James Jones, Richard Rodgers, they can't create separation. So they're pressing them at the line, and they're not letting them get any separation. So Aaron Rodgers doesn't have anyone to throw to, and his offensive line has been really shaky, and they haven't given him the time to throw. He's had to make some throws on the run, and so they have to adjust again if they want to survive. Because if the Lions can do that to the Packers, think what will happen to them in the playoffs, because they're probably going to make the playoffs. But against a good team, oh man, they're going to get destroyed. Like we saw against the Broncos. I mean, 77 pass yards. That's terrible.
Yeah, that's Peyton Manning bad. No, but anyway, yeah, the Packers, they've been hit with injuries hard too this year. But that almost seems like that almost seems to be the case with them every year. You know, their offensive line gets shifted around at least 3 to 4 times every single year, and it's starting to catch up with Aaron Rodgers as he, you know, kind of gets up there a little bit older in age. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to watch in Green Bay.
One thing that I've been entertained by this season is the dumpster fire in Dallas. That's absolutely entertaining. I love it because I hate the Cowboys. And, you know, they have so many awful people on their team, it seems like. Des Bryant can't control himself in the locker room. Greg Hardy is Greg Hardy. And, you know, their offense is so bad. It can't get a running game going. You know, Tony Romo's back, but what's he going to do? Go 7-0? I mean, a 9-7 team's not going to make the playoffs in the NFC. And so I love it. I think it's great. I'm sure they're longing for the days of 8-8 where they were at least average, but, you know, choke and lose against the Buccaneers where you had the win, you had the fumble at the goal line, then you get defensive holding called and you give up a touchdown the next play.
You know, although they are 2-7, they play in the NFC least. So if they can go 4-3, probably not 4-3, but closer to a 5-2, 6-1 record, they can more than likely make the playoffs at 8-8, 9-7, or heck, even 7-9. Really, I mean, the NFC East is just absolutely bad this year. You got the Giants, who always seem to blow wins no matter what they do to try, and then you got the Redskins, who are so inconsistent, and then you got the Eagles, who have Sam Bradford with the concussion. Now they're bringing in Mark Sanchez as their backup quarterback, and I'm sure he can't lead the Eagles to any sort of playoffs. So Cowboys 7-9, 8-8 season might be playoffs.
You know, we've seen a lot of times before. You got like the 8-7 Cowboys playing the 8-7 Eagles or Giants for a chance to go and get a wild card spot, and the Giants, the Cowboys always seem to lose those games. And then, you know, when the Cowboys do win, they get ousted from the playoffs. But when the Giants win, they win a Super Bowl. And so, you know, it's going to be interesting because I don't think you can discount whoever wins the NFC East because you never know what's going to happen, especially with Eli Manning, who's probably the superior playoff Manning. But, you know, that's going to be interesting to watch because any team can win it at this point. Even the Redskins. Kirk Cousins had a really good game, and so.
Yeah, speaking of the Redskins, it's a dumpster fire in New Orleans too. Oh my goodness. That, you know, Rob Ryan, you know, he finally got fired. You know, but wow, that is a bad Saints defense. They're on pace to allow the most passing touchdowns in a season in NFL history. You know, that's how bad they are. I think they've given up like 28 passing touchdowns this year, and they've allowed I think they've allowed quarterbacks to throw for at least 4 touchdowns last 3 weeks. I think it's been, and it is just a bad defense. And yeah, I think we're seeing the end of the New Orleans Saints.
You know, the Saints filled that defensive coordinator position with Dennis Allen, their defensive backs coach. Weren't their defensive backs the problem there? Why would you give it to some defensive backs coach who's letting his opposing quarterbacks put up MVP-type numbers every week against them? Like,
oh, and plus, you know, he used to be the Raiders' horrible head coach. You know, he only won, 6 games in Oakland in 2 or 3 years? Oh, my goodness.
Exactly.
It is just, I don't understand that logic. Why would you fill a vacant head or coaching position with a crappy coach? Why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense to me.
You know, I think Sean Payton's trying to get fired. I think he wants out of New Orleans. Well, I mean, who wouldn't? They're terrible. Drew Brees, you know, after he got me consecutively 44 and 31 fantasy points, and then he got 12 last week. And now that that's over, he can get back to throwing a touchdown and 2 interceptions every week. You know, another game that I found really entertaining was Steelers-Browns. You know, you got to be mad at the Browns defensive end that injured Landry Jones because you injure the backup quarterback, and then in comes Super Bowl winning Ben Roethlisberger. He's entirely immobile, though, But even so, they only get 1 sack, and he's throwing bombs down the field all day, and you lose 30-9. The Browns, they never had any hope to begin the season, but whatever semblance of hope they had, it's entirely gone. Because, they're starting Johnny Manziel now. And, when that happens, you've declared that the end has come. So,
I'm not completely against the starting of Johnny Manziel. Browns have had some really bad draft picks, and they're 2-8. What more can they do? They can go 8-8, miss the playoffs. So if they throw Johnny Manziel in, you just see how he does. You draft him in the first round for a reason. He could be your franchise quarterback. He could be another Browns bust for all we know. Might as well give him a shot to see if he is your franchise quarterback, and if he's not, on to the next quarterback for Cleveland.
Well, yeah, it's very likely that he's a bust. So, by starting him, they're tanking for another quarterback, and I know they stink this year in college, but probably better than Johnny Manziel. But Johnny Manziel, I think a lot of his stats, kind of came in garbage time too. After they were down, they kind of gave up. Oh, look, he passed for 300 yards. Say all the big talking heads and like Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith. But, Cleveland, man, they just need a quarterback. Probably not going to happen.
I don't think Cleveland will ever get a good quarterback, probably in our lifetimes even. That's how bad their quarterback is.
Yeah, probably not. Let's see. Well, yes.
Bengals, Texans.
Yes, okay, let's go with that. The Bengals Texans. I know Evan will probably want to talk about his Dalton scale with that game. So I'll just save that for him. But oh my gosh, the Bengals still can't win in prime time. They go 8-0 and going into this game, hey, let's get the monkey off our back. Let's beat the stinky Texans, and they lose 10-6. Come on.
With Andy Dalton, for every Andy Dalton action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. You go from positive to negative. We've known for a long time that Andy Dalton is the most average quarterback in the NFL. The Red Rifle, they were talking MVP. He didn't play great last week, and then they stink it up against an awful franchise that has one decent player. And, the J.J. Watt was talking going in, we want to make the Red Rifle look like a Red Ryder BB gun. He did it to himself. He didn't do anything. And, I think that they're probably going to, in the grand scheme of things, this loss doesn't mean a whole lot because they're still 8-1. They're 2 or so games ahead of the Steelers for the lead in the AFC North. But, I don't know, Andy Dalton, I don't know if he can buy a playoff win because he does this every single time he gets to the playoffs. I remember, I think it was 2012, they made the playoffs, and they were in the wild card against the Texans, and they lost 31-10. And then some dude on Wikipedia changed the name of the owner of the Bengals to T.J. Yates, who played quarterback for the Texans that day. You can't even beat T.J. Yates in the playoffs. I'm not ready to crown you MVP of the NFL.
Oh, on NFL Live, when a couple weeks ago when there were still those 3 undefeated teams, they had a drawing of teams, and you had to give your case as to why this team could go undefeated and win the Super Bowl. Somebody drew the Bengals, and their case was the Bengals can win a 34-31 game or a 13-10 game. I'm not sure that they can win a 13-10 game anymore. If their defense, if their offense doesn't get going in those games, then you can't win, really.
They don't have the defense that allows them to win defensively. They have a defense that when their offense can put up numbers, they can just keep the other team from scoring as many points as them. But when their offense isn't doing well, I don't think that their defense is going to be able to, especially in a playoff situation, hold a team. Because, you see what happens when the Bengals offense goes and down the toilet. They only score 6 points, and it's hard to hold your opponent to 6 points regardless. So I don't think that's true.
Bengals, their AFC wildcard team matchup, because they're gonna get the 3 or the 4 seed more than likely. probably the 3 seed because I don't see the Colts catching up to them at 8-1. But they'll get the 6 seed in the AFC, and the 6 seed is looking to be pretty good. You got the Jets, who Jets are looking like they could be the 6 seed. And if they get Ryan Fitzpatrick back, the Jets could be deadly. And you see Andy Dalton lose to Ryan Fitzpatrick. And then Andy Dalton sucks.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's see. Another game I want to talk about too. Patriots Giants. That was going into it. We're all like, oh hey, Giants. They can upset the Patriots. And hey, they almost did. And Brady. Hey, he kind of pulled a Russell Wilson there in the last 2 minutes by throwing an interception at the goal line. But the Giants. They just couldn't pull it out. And Steven Gostkowski. He barely made that game-winning field goal, but hey, a make's a make, and the Patriots are still undefeated, but man, that loss of Julian Edelman, over the next few weeks, I think that's gonna hurt them.
Can we go to the NFL front office and ask for what a catch is? Is it 2 steps? Is it 3 steps? Or is it 4 steps?
I don't think that the steps really factors in because, it's of course there's the customary 2 feet in, but it's also the process of becoming a runner. And also, that really just seems kind of subjective. It's pretty much, do I feel like he had the ball long enough? Do I feel like he made a quote-unquote football move, which nobody really knows what that is? It's ambiguous, and it's going to be up to human judgment. And whenever it's up to human judgment, you're going to have errors sometimes. And so I don't know if it's going to be made any better. Because, you just can't say, oh, he had the ball in his hands to catch. Some people would like that. And then there's other times when they would say, oh, no, we don't want that to be a catch because the guy on the other team makes a quote-unquote catch like that. And so I don't know if we're going to be able to ever optimize the catch rule because I don't think that's possible.
I think a good catch could be considered as possessing the ball and taking 3 steps. Is there any argument to that?
Well, yeah, and excuse me. We don't. We sit here and we're puzzled. Why hasn't the NFL come out with anything like that? Do they want the controversy? Do do they want all the hate mail, flowing into Roger Goodell's office? I guess they want that. It just doesn't make any sense. And yeah, there were a couple bad calls, there were a couple controversial calls in the Seahawks Cardinals game too. It's just really, it's a strange thing to think about, that they still don't have a official thing in the rule book about what isn't a catch.
Looking at 3 catches this season, 2 of which happened this week, and 1 of which was a couple weeks ago. The Golden Tate touchdown, not the touchdown, actually, the fumble to the Bears interception, he was in the end zone, so if he had the catch, how is that not a touchdown? And then
they did call it a touchdown because he caught the ball at the half-yard line and he turned to go in the end zone, and when he was in the end zone, somebody popped the ball out. And I did agree that was a touchdown.
They did call. I thought they called that the.
No,
Bears.
they called it a touchdown.
Oh,
yep.
But then you got the Odell touchdown this week. 2.5 steps. Defender comes in, knocks the ball out. Odell had the possession for those 2.5 steps. No good. Giants lose the game. The Darren Fells catch towards the end of the second quarter. You got Darren Fells catching the ball. 2.5 steps. Possesses the ball for all those steps. Defender comes in, knocks the ball out, fumble, incomplete pass. What is a catch and what is not a catch? It's just so ambiguous and confusing.
Oh, well, at least we have the NFL offices that whenever they screw up a call, they can send out the apology wagon and send you a basket of fruit to make you feel better.
Then, now your playoff chances are screwed. Oh, well, better luck next year. Yeah, thanks.
Talking about the NFL front office, they already sent out their apology letter this week to the Ravens. The Jaguars weren't set on that last play. Blake Bortles falls down, gets back up. Elvis Dumervil comes in, pulls the face mask. They get a 50-yard field goal for the win. If they would have called the false start because the Jaguars weren't set, game over, no face mask, Ravens win.
I would have been more upset if this was an actual football game, but it was just Jaguars-Ravens. You know, you got two win teams that nobody cares what happens. If this was like, if that had happened in Giants-Patriots, there would be a lot more of an uproar. But since it was Ravens-Jaguars, you know, everyone's like, oh, the NFL screwed up, but I don't really care because that's not going to help either team if they win. So,
well, yeah, you know, plus, you know, the fans of the Ravens are probably like, yes, tanking for a draft pick. Thanks, NFL.
You know, that face mask by Elmas Duverville, though, what was he thinking? Ripping his face mask. Blake Bortles was basically down after he stumbled around in the pocket like an idiot.
The Ravens don't know what's going on. They're 2-8 now. It's shameful to watch them play football.
They are so bad. Just like, you know, the rest of the NFL, so much parity in the NFL this season, especially. The Bears are now 4-5, same record as the Colts. That's kind of crazy after the Bears started like 0-4, I think, and were pegged as dead last in every NFL power ranking, saying it's time to tank, it's time to tank.
Well, you know, the difference between the Bears and the Colts is that the Colts have a hopeful future and a franchise quarterback. The Bears still have a super porous defense and a quarterback that's going to be, well, he's been on his way down for a long time, and he's going to be on his way out here in a few years. So there's reason for hope in Indy, not really in Chicago, especially since Chicago's in the NFC North behind a 7-2 and 6-3 team.
But the rest of the parity in the NFL, this team will be good for 1 week, then they'll suck against this other team that was really bad last week. You know, I like to see the NFL circle of parity every year, but we can't have that with two 9-0 teams. But if you're unaware of what the circle of parity is, you have one giant circle of where this team beats this team, who beats this team, who beats this team, and it comes all the way around in a circle to where every team is better than the next team in some way of how you look at it. Those are always really fun to look at.
That's like the definition of the Rams. Like they beat the Cardinals and they beat the Seahawks. They beat the Packers. They beat all these great NFC teams. Then they go and lose by 30 points to the Bears. You never know what you're going to see out of them. Todd Gurley only had 45 rushing yards. It's just you never know what to expect out of the Rams.
Yeah, you know, I think they just benched Nick Foles for Case Keenum. But, yeah, you know, the Rams, you know, they're obviously in the running for a new quarterback. And, you know, as for Jeff Fisher, probably on your way to another 8-8 season and out the door, quite honestly. You know, he just hasn't improved anything in St. Louis.
You know, the Rams are the team every year that go 6-10, 7-9, maybe 8-8. But then they get all those big upsets that affect the playoff seeding drastically. They beat the Seahawks every year. They beat the Cardinals. Like, why can't you play that good against the crappy teams, but you can beat the Seahawks and the Cardinals, and you can beat so many other good teams?
Well, it's hard to beat teams when you have Nick Foles going 17 for 40 for 138 yards. I mean, he's only thrown 7 touchdowns this year. That's like Peyton Manning bad.
Yeah, yeah, let's see. Looking forward to this week's game. You know, my big game. You know, I'm gonna have to be biased again. Sorry, but Packers at Vikings. You know, that game's huge. It's nationally televised at 4:00. Yeah, and you know this will be a huge deciding factor in the NFC North, and you know, who takes the well, not necessarily commandingly, but you know, a huge leap towards winning the division. You know, the Packers have been really down recently. You know, they've lost 3 games in a row. And the Vikings, you know, they've won 5 in a row. You know, they've won pretty or not very prettily, but you know, win's a win, and that'll be a huge matchup.
You know, an interesting thing, that's kind of anybody's game because the betting line on that game is even. Like, the nerds in the desert don't know who's going to win. And then Bengals Cardinals, which would have been an even bigger matchup, but now the Bengals lost. And the Cardinals, after going through a bit of a rough patch, they're back on their way up. And once again, they look like one of the best teams in the NFL. So that's going to be interesting to watch. Can Andy Dalton get back on track? And can Carson Palmer keep his Cardinals team on track? I mean, they put up 39 points in Seattle, and that was impressive. Even though Seattle's down this year, they still have a great defense.
I think those were really my two big games of the week. You got the Bengals Cardinals on Sunday night. Cardinals playing another Sunday night game. I think that one was due to the NFL flex scheduling, which I absolutely love, so you don't get a team like the Chiefs and Ravens playing on Sunday night.
Oh, yeah, they do that so, you don't get a Thursday night game on Sunday night. Thursday night games, they stink. So, yeah, thank goodness for the flex schedule. And I didn't realize this, but the NFL doesn't or they don't announce the Week 17 Sunday night game until after Week 16 gets over. And so, yeah, we do get a pretty good Week 17 Sunday night game. So, yeah, it's good that they at least do that right.
Sunday nights are always the best. They always have the best games. You think like, Monday night, that's the only game on. Those games are always meh. Because I remember, what was the last Monday night game? We had Houston and Bengals, snooze fest, and you had the Bears and Chargers the week before that.
So let's look at college basketball for a quick second. You've got all these teams playing cupcakes teams, and they're still losing to these cupcake teams. What the heck?
Well, I think one explanation, at least in the case of Georgetown beating Virginia, I think George Washington beating Virginia is that they really are a good team. I mean, they play in the Atlantic 10, so they're not like this obscure team no one's ever heard of. That's a pretty prominent mid-major division. And, they just completely outplayed Virginia. I mean, they made Virginia's defense, after the first few possessions, they looked downright comfortable against Virginia's vaunted defense. When Georgetown played them last year, they only mustered 44 points, and 30-point improvement from one year to the next. That was a huge win, and I think that is kind of reason for worry in Virginia, because if you've got these George Washington teams coming in and beating you, you got some fine-tuning to do before ACC play starts.
I wasn't as big on Virginia as a lot of the other big polls, so I didn't see this loss coming, but I'm sure they would have lost to another bad team, really. I don't think they're as good as what other big polls are making them out to be. They've really only got like Malcolm Brogdon. That's about the only star player that they have. I mean, I don't see anybody else on Virginia that can carry that team to a national title. I'm thinking like a Sweet 16 exit, really, for the Cavaliers.
Possibly. And, another team that everybody's pegging to be a Sweet 16 and done is Indiana. My favorite team. I watched them play Austin Peay. Apparently that's how you pronounce it, Austin Peay, the other night. And they looked downright on fire. I mean, their defense stunk. But, they scored 102 points. 51 in each half. Yogi Ferrell and James Blackman combined to go 8 for 10 from 3. They hit like 18 threes. Heck, even Nick Zeisloft with like a dislocated finger hit like 4 threes, 5 threes. I think the fire emoji was made for Indiana's offense because they're going to put up points in bunches against pretty much every team that they play, no matter how good defensively. And it's just going to come down to, can teams slow it down against them? Any Big Ten teams can slow it down against Indiana, but that means you're only going to score maybe 60 points, and Indiana scores in bunches. And when they go on runs, they go on runs, and they get hot, and they can shoot the three better than any team really that I've ever seen. It reminds me of back a few years ago when they had like Jordan Holes and Christian Watford, and they were hitting 23s a game, and they were going to the Sweet 16 to lose to Syracuse, but there's reason for optimism in Bloomington, which I'm excited about.
Some of the other big upset losses were Wisconsin lost to Western Illinois. I'm not sure how that really happened, and some of these Big Ten teams, and there was another. I know Iowa lost in the preseason, and there was another big team that lost in the preseason. They both lost to Division II opponents. Like, that is just absolutely bad.
That's sad. That's really sad.
And Iowa's in the Big Ten, for goodness sakes. So they should have a pretty average team at the minimum. Like,
we have a lot of these teams that are good but not great, with the exception of like Kentucky, UNC, Maryland. Speaking of Kentucky, they played a great game against Duke last night, and they beat them by like 9, and they just showed how dominant they can be. And once again, Kentucky's going to be competing for a national championship. Maybe they'll actually win it this year. I don't think they'll go undefeated, but they could come close. That's a great team, and they just keep adding great freshmen. I don't know how Calipari does it. Everybody wants to go play for Kentucky.
Yeah, this is what makes college basketball exciting. Upsets are so much more likely to happen than I guess you could say in college football. In college football, if your passing game isn't working for you, you just run the ball and you'll be fine. But in college basketball, if your offense, if you have a shooting offense and you're off one night, your offense is screwed. There's nothing you can do. And it's I like the upsets. It shakes up the rankings and they're fun to watch.
So let's wrap up the end of our show here. Evan, any closing thoughts before we sign off?
Once again, congratulations, Peyton Manning, on breaking the NFL passing record. It's kind of sad to see him, go, really. This is his last season, almost certainly. I grew up watching him play for the Colts. One of the first games I remember watching was Super Bowl 41, watching him beat the Bears and watching him win a ring. And, as a Colts fan, I'll always love Peyton Manning. It really hurts to see him play this poorly. And so congratulations, see you in retirement, or you're going to do even more Papa John's ads.
Closing thoughts, Nate.
Hey, well, happy early Thanksgiving to RationalFanz Nation. We love you guys. Appreciate all the comments and, all the love mail. And, watch some football and eat plenty of turkey.
Next week, we will not have a show due to Thanksgiving. And my closing thought is watch for the Panthers to go 16-0 this season. It is very likely with that poor schedule they have the rest of the way. Thank you for tuning into this week's edition of Rational Fans. We'll see you next week.